Linda Hirsch, and this is EdCast, a program created and produced by educators for everyone interested in education. Korean prominence on international student test scores is well known. South Korea is a consistent top performer in the PISA, or Program for International Student Assessment, ranking well above the United States. Some attribute Korea's academic success to the demands and expectations placed on Korean children. Today on EdCast, I'll speak with Monica Schnee, an early childhood educator who received a Fulbright Award to visit Korean kindergartens. What she observed may come as a surprise and a challenge to our views of kindergarten in the U.S. Next on EdCast. My guest today is Monica Schnee, ESL coordinator and teacher in the River Edge Public School District in New Jersey, and the recipient of a Fulbright Distinguished Award in Teaching. Thank you so much for joining us today on EdCast. You have a very interesting background. Tell us a little bit about how you came to be a teacher.
Well, my first career was as a television journalist and writer, but we lived overseas, and when we came to the United States with our two young children, I decided that I wanted to be able to spend more time with them, and also to understand the school system that was completely alien to me because I wasn't born and raised here. So I went to graduate school to get a master's in education, and I worked in educational publishing, and eventually I joined the public schools.
So what made you apply for a Fulbright Award, a very prestigious teaching award, to go to Korea?
Our district has a very large population of Koreans, and I've been working with them for the last 10 years, and I was very curious to see and to learn firsthand about their culture and also about their English education, because although some of the children come speaking some English and the parents are shocked when we say, well, you know, they need support services, and they don't understand why. They believe that their children speak enough social English. So I was curious to learn, you know, firsthand why it is that they feel actually very disrespected in a way when we say they need this extra support when they've spent so much time and effort trying to teach them English.
Much more time than we spend here learning other languages, I'm sure. Let me ask you then, you went to look at kindergartens, yes?
I actually went to look at English language education in Korea, and I also looked at kindergartens because I teach the primary grades.
And for how long were you there?
I was there for 4 months, a little bit over 4 months.
So let's talk about kindergarten in Korea. Here in the U.S., we certainly know that Korea ranks very highly, always on the top of the PISA assessment tests. And our own thinking is always that the curriculum is very rigorous, it's very academic. But what did you observe when you looked at kindergarten in Korea?
Well, kindergarten in Korea is this oasis, I think, of education in Korea itself. It's based on what they call the Nuri, the world curriculum that is very much aligned to Maria Montessori's philosophy.
And what is that exactly, just for our viewers who might not be that familiar?
It's play-based.
Okay.
The children are not taught specifically to read and write in kindergarten. Many children learn how to read and write at home, or they take private lessons in those famous private academies they call hagwons.
Before kindergarten? So that would sort of contradict the laid-backness of kindergarten if they all come in there already knowing how to read.
No, they would do it simultaneously.
Okay.
But the whole point of kindergarten in Korea really is to teach the children to become self-disciplined, self-regulated, that they can, it's very experiential. The children learn through play, through doing things. Like I was in a classroom where they had planted their own sweet potatoes, and then they had, harvested them, and they were going to cook them. So they cooked the sweet potatoes the day I was there. And it's an incredible lesson in science,
right?
But it's experiential. They're not learning from a book. Because they know how rigorous the rest of their school lives will be and how important academics are to place a person in society, really, in Korea. Kindergarten is the place where they're allowed to be creative and where they're allowed to play and to experience.
What is the age of a typical kindergartner in Korea?
Well,
you said something about how they age kids, how they date them, so to speak.
Yes. So in the Korean tradition, when a child is born, a child is already a year old.
Okay.
So, and they go by the Lunar New Year. So they enter, quote unquote, a year later than the kids do here.
So we would typically then say that the kindergartner there would be 6 years old instead of 5 or something like that?
I would say more like between 5 and 5.5, maybe 6, maybe.
That's not so different.
It's not
from here.
so different, but what is very different is the way the children are treated.
And how are they treated?
They're treated like little kids.
Like little kids. They're not.
The emphasis is not on the academics in kindergarten.
What about technology? I mean, we're worried about we don't have enough computers in every classroom. We're going to look at some photos in a minute,
Yeah.
but what's the prevalence of technology in these early grades?
Well, the prevalence of technology in terms of the schools is non-existent as far as I could see.
In kindergarten?
Kindergarten and elementary.
Really?
Yes,
Okay.
elementary. I say in the land where kids are born with a Samsung, in their hands, because everything, the country is so incredibly technologically oriented. They have the best Wi-Fi on earth on the subways that are way down underground. Everything is, technologically done. However, technology does not enter the classroom. I was surprised. I walked into the school.
I'm really stunned.
No, and I said, first of all, I looked around and I said, where is the teacher's desk? And they said, the teacher's desk? In the office. We are not here to do our work. So the classrooms are already set up, especially in kindergarten, without a teacher's desk. One of the schools, one of the kindergartens that I visited had a large screen, a Samsung screen, but it was used to watch the children's videos of them doing different things, and to sing songs, to watch. It was they had a Korean traditional dance class, and they had to watch the traditional dancers.
Right.
But the children are not engaged with technology the way they are here. Here we are, as they call it, one-to-one. So it's one student, one device, correct?
We want that, certainly.
Well, a lot of districts have that because as a result of the standardized tests that begin in 3rd grade, whether it's PARC or, the other test, they are done online. Same thing with the tests for English learners here. So children need to know how to use computers.
So when and where do Korean children become so technologically savvy so that they can be in the forefront of technology? If they're not doing that in the classroom, where are they doing that? Or do they do it later on in the middle school years, the high school years, or?
Well, first of all, they do it at home.
They do it
like
at
all
home.
the other kids here
Okay,
too,
so
right?
it's mostly at home, but they're
But there is a computer lab
okay.
in the school, and the children will go to the computer lab once a week. But computers are not part of the instructional day. I was in 5th and 6th grade classrooms, 4th grade classrooms. Kids there are writing, I would say, old-fashioned, in the old-fashioned way. They have a pencil and paper. They have these notebooks with little rectangles where they have to put each symbol, right?
Right.
And it's painstaking, and I think that contributes, honestly, to their incredible focus. You don't see them sitting at their desks, using the computer, and they don't.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, when the Korean kids that I see here come from Korea, the first week, I give them an iPad to take to their classroom because I have it set up so they can go into Google Translate and not be completely isolated. And they're looking at me like, why would you give me an iPad? So, and I explain to the parents, now that I know, because I didn't know that before, now I know, and I say, here we use technology, and they don't seem very excited about it.
Let's take a look at some of the photos that you took while you were there.
Sure.
Let's take a look at the first one. This is a street corner. What is so interesting to you about what we're looking at?
Okay, so one of the things that fascinated me about Korea is that the street signs, if there's a school nearby, there will be a street sign pointing towards the school. And there will be many street signs. For example, one 4 blocks away, then another one 2 blocks away, then another one a block away until you get to the school.
Really? Now, is that true for other points of interest? Let's say, you know, the pharmacy or the whatever else.
No, it is true for schools, for temples, for
hospitals, maybe?
Hospitals, for government buildings. But not only are the street signs, not only are the schools marked on the street signs, but when you get off the subway and you go and you look at the map of the area, all the schools in the area are there.
So that obviously underscores the importance of schools and education in the culture. That they think it's important enough to tell you there's a school here it is, and here's how you get to it.
Well, that was my interpretation. You know, after the Korean War, which was devastating for Korea, and Korea was the second poorest country in the world after the war, Koreans realized that, and they say it, that the only thing they had going for them was their brain power. They didn't have resources, natural resources. The country was completely devastated, but they had their brain power and their sense of community, of a community building. And so I think, and again, it's very personal, but I think that giving, you know, having those signs there is yet again, evidence of the importance of education.
Right. Let's take a look at the next photo, which is a classroom. What should we be observing here in this classroom? We have another classroom photo following, but what should we be looking at here?
Well, to me, this is what a kindergarten classroom should look like.
I noticed the absence of the alphabet on the top along the wall.
You're absolutely right.
I don't see the alphabet.
That's right. So you notice that there's no alphabet.
I
you notice that the whiteboard, there's no whiteboard really. There's
there's no whiteboard.
No whiteboard. You notice it's very inviting and very warm. It has the curtains. Yes, there is a TV in the background.
Looks like a house. It looks like a room in someone's home.
It's a place where kids want to come in and play. And they are all, and the truth is they come in. It's just wonderful because they come into school and first they have to take off their street shoes. Everybody knows the routine. They take off their street shoes, they take off their jackets before they enter the classrooms. And everything is left outside the classrooms. And then they put on their school shoes and they walk into the classroom. Now, they walk in at different times. They don't take attendance.
Oh.
Teacher, I mean, I was shocked. I asked, and when I asked these questions, they looked at me as if I were crazy. I go, don't you take attendance? And they looked at me and they said, we know who's here. They come and they trickle in. Oh, okay.
They trickle in, so they don't all have to come at a particular start time?
No, they come between 8:30 and 9. They trickle in.
But it's 9 o'clock considered the ultimate,
and they're all there.
They have to be there by 9 o'clock.
And by 9 o'clock they're all there. But as they trickle in, they go to friends and they find places to play. Some play, you know, with blocks. Some go to the library. Then once they're all in, they they start their day in their different spots.
It sounds Montessori-esque.
Yes.
Let's look at the next classroom photo just to see. So does this add anything to what we should be looking at here?
Yes.
Okay.
For example, there are some toys there that are the traditional Korean cooking
Are they
hands.
in the front screen?
Yes,
they're
in the
front.
Yes,
Okay, right.
yes. And also on this side, to my right, you can see that the table is set for snack. They get one snack a day in the morning, and it will be either yogurt or milk. And sometimes they get some cookies. Everybody gets the same, and it is provided by the state. So they have their snack, and there's a piano. Every classroom and traditional Korean instruments. Every classroom has Korean instruments because teaching them about their culture, about their history, and about their music is of utmost importance to them. I don't know if you noticed during the Olympics, during the opening, when the women were playing the drums and they were moving their heads very, with incredible synchronicity from one side to the other. I saw a class of first graders doing that. They start in kindergarten, but I witnessed a first grade traditional Korean music class.
Learn that.
They have the drums, and they have to all learn how to play together. It's incredible. I mean, education is so much broader than the way we look at it here.
The idea of everyone playing together also has a very collaborative concept behind it, I think. Something, you know, I don't know that we emphasize here, but we'll talk about here in a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Take a look at the next photos. I think it's of an abacus.
Yes. So they do. They use abacus for math, and they have globes, and they have all sorts of different, you know, resources that connect them to the world, and it's not just play.
Yeah. All right. So let's see the next photo. I think is books. Okay, so tell us about the kinds of books that the children are reading. Are they all in Korean? I noticed the happy birthday sign in the classroom was in English.
Yes.
Yeah, and the books, what kinds of books? Are these all picture books, I'm assuming?
Yes, there are picture books. There's one about Van Gogh, as you can see.
I see that here.
Yes.
Yeah, I see that.
A lot of it is about history and Korean traditions. They have folk tales. They also have some of our best known authors that are translated. Mo Willems is translated into Korean. Yes, so they will have some of these books, you know, Rosemary Wells. They might have some of the books.
Right. And are the children read to periodically? Is there a
They have read-alouds, just like we do.
So
yes,
the teacher really sit in a circle and they talk about the text? All right. Let's take a look at the next photo, and here we're going to take a look at needle and thread. I didn't know what that was, what I was looking at there. What is that exactly? It looks like a lot of hand-eye coordination that I don't think I could do, but I mean.
Okay, well that was amazing. So that's very much Montessori, but not only is it Montessori, they have a, you know, so there are different centers and the children can choose where they want to go. They're not told to go to that center. They might gravitate towards the needle and thread. So there was a group of kids they're making shapes. They have to create shapes doing, you know, X's. So then the teacher ended up there and she, you know, modeled for them how they could do it better. There was a group of children who were working with chopsticks, trying to, you know, grab tiny beans with chopsticks. That requires not only dexterity and fine motor skills, but the amount of focus that a child needs. And so one of the things I realized while I was there was they don't, at least what I saw, I didn't see any classroom management issues because the children are not told what to do. They sort of gravitate towards the things that they were doing the day before or things they want to discover today or experience today. And they're generally with one or two other kids doing that. So the teacher works and the aide works with them as they move along. And then there are a couple of lessons where they are together.
So let's take a look at science, because you've mentioned science earlier as being experiential. The next photo is the bean, I think this is a bean study?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about this. What
so
was
this was a bean study and the children had to obviously sort, you know, they had to sort, identify the beans, and then glue them into their...
Was this a math thing more than science?
It was math and science. It was both. It was counting and sorting, but they also had to write the kind of bean. And, you know, the other thing that was very noticeable is that the children are free to come and go. So if they want to leave the room,
if
they want to leave the room, for some reason they want to go outside to see another child in another room, or they just leave and then come back and they continue working on what they're working.
Oh, wow. All right, so that's very free. Let's take a look at science for a minute. So this is what you were talking about earlier, this very experiential learning. Tell us a little bit about this.
So they had grown the sweet potatoes in the spring. I was there in the fall and winter. So like 2 weeks before I came, they had gathered their crop. And today they were going to cook it. So some of the children were in charge of washing the sweet potatoes, then others were helping not cut, but once the teacher cut them, they were dipping them in the egg and flour.
Great.
Then some of them were in charge of setting the table. Others were in charge of walking around and distributing, the sweet potatoes, which were delicious, by the way. And once we all ate the sweet potatoes, they went back. They all sat down, and then the teacher did her science lesson, like a lesson we would do in the United States, but it was on the screen, because she went back to when they had planted the seeds, and then she had videoed, the growth of the seeds, and the kids could watch what they had planted.
Amazing. Let's take a look at lunch quickly. They just told me that we're running out of time. I can't believe it. Oh, this is the place, this is the scale. What was this about?
This is the scale. They weigh, obviously, Korean food. It's udon and other kinds of noodles and vegetables. Yes.
Right. And lunch, let's take a look at lunch. This is what, the menu?
Yes, so lunch was my favorite thing.
And why was lunch your favorite
Lunch
thing?
was really the highlight of my whole
Was the
trip.
food especially good? Or?
The food was amazing, but not only the food. First of all, the idea that every school has a nutritionist on staff. Second, everybody eats lunch together, teachers and children. Everybody eats, there's soup, there's rice, there's kimchi, there's a protein, and then there's a fruit. For everybody.
Okay.
Everybody eats exactly the same food. If you don't like it, you have to try it, and then you don't need to eat it, but you have to taste it. Then the kids do, I don't know if you see the trays, they have the special, compartments for everything.
Yes, I see that, right.
Then the children have to get up, and they have to pour the leftover foods in composting bins, and then they stack the trays.
Is that very
Everybody does
Montessori? That sounds very Montessori.
No, because that happens in the high school and in the middle school too.
Really?
And in high school
okay.
and middle school, the kids
Oh,
clean
got
the
it.
floors.
Okay. So, really?
Yes.
Okay. Let's take a look at the final two pictures we have, which look at traditional instruments and a traditional Korean house. So this is what you mentioned earlier.
Yes, they're there. So the children are always exposed. They have their traditions right next to them, and they play with them, and they can listen to how the music sounds, but they can also create their own music.
Okay.
So
and the last photo I think we have is a traditional Korean house. Tell us what we're looking at here.
that's a little hanok, a traditional house, and the children have puppets and that are dressed in the traditional Korean clothing. It's called hanbok, and they just play with the puppets, and it's creative play. They use their imagination, they create dialogues, they create scenarios.
So all of this, Monica, brings us to the U.S. How does all of this compare with what you know about kindergarten education in this country?
Well, it's radically different.
Okay.
I think we give tremendous weight to academics, and I'm not sure, again, this is personal and from my own experience, I think there's a place for everything. I think we're losing sight of how important play is in kindergarten, the benefits of playing in kindergarten. I think that when the standards, the Common Core standards were created, and there was a reason for them, and they give, the country uniformity. There are a whole host of reasons why they exist. And
I want to just give the sort of the devil's advocate. We felt, the United States have felt that many of our students enter a school with some of our students, with not the same vocabulary, that there's an achievement gap that we know about between white students, Hispanic students, Asian students,
Yes.
and some of the kindergarten and pre-K, philosophically, I guess, was meant to compensate for some of that by making these programs more academic. Do you think that's you did mention that the Korean children get a lot of this at home. Are we on the wrong track, or, should we go back to play?
Well, first of all, the Korean children not all of them get a lot of it at home, because many families work very, very hard. 30% of their income goes to education, to support extracurricular activities, which is basically private academies, hagwons, for the kids to then get into the most prestigious, what they're called sky universities. So parents work very hard. It has changed. There are mothers, stay-at-home mothers, but part of it is, yes, the parents might be home or may not be home like they are here. But I think you said something just now. We wanted to close that achievement gap.
Right.
Play allows for children to develop their language. And if play is scaffolded, that means it's facilitated, helped by an adult, children will acquire the language they need. So if they're talking about cooking sweet potatoes, if the kids don't have the language, the teacher can step in. First of all, there might be other kids who have the language and those kids don't. It doesn't all have to do with literacy.
We are out of time, but I do want to say that what you're basically saying is that we could close that achievement gap with more play rather than with greater emphasis on the phonics and the other academic, or could we? We really are running out of time,
Yes.
but just give me your last quick thought.
My last quick thought is I think we need the kids to have a little bit more independence to play, to self-regulate, to be able to navigate situations that they don't know how to navigate anymore socially, and to use that language that is so important in play, but then academically to communicate not only their feelings but their thinking. I think there should be more play in kindergarten at this point.
Thank you so much for a provocative, thought-provoking look at education, kindergarten education in Korea and here. Monica Schnee, thank you so much for joining us on EdCast.
My pleasure.
Don't go away. We'll be right back with our Ed Bites. Welcome back to this edition of Ed Bites. Okay, so maybe your teens don't help you too much, but helping others can boost their self-confidence. NPR reports on a study that indicates that adolescents enjoy volunteering and that they may benefit psychologically from doing so. The study suggests that selfless behaviors, including large and small acts of kindness, raise teens' feelings of self-worth. The caveat? Teens who assisted strangers, not friends and family, received the greatest boost in self-esteem. Inside Higher Ed reports that almost 64% of college students sampled said they don't feel they have the skills and knowledge needed to find a job or succeed at one. Liberal arts students were the least confident about their job prospects, while STEM majors were the most. The study shows that students' confidence in their skills and employment opportunities actually diminished as they moved from freshman to senior year. That's it for this edition of EdCast. Till next time, class dismissed.
We'd like to hear from you. Please send your thoughts and comments to cunyedcast@gmail.com.